Hey, this is Tiger. Good evening and welcome to my stream. Hey AJ, thank you for moderating this stream once more. Before we start, please heed the disclaimer. We are talking about playing a computer game. It has nothing to do with driving and dealing with real trains or railway installations, so please let this stuff or leave this stuff alone. It is dangerous and at any rate most annoying for everybody involved. What I was trying to do today, or what I was aiming to do today, was going back underground. And for that, CD Radar, welcome to the stream. Bitte halten Sie den Türbereich frei. Yes, please. Keep the area at the doors free so that people can board and get off the train if they so want. London Underground, the other way around, from Elephant and Castle towards Harrow and Wealdstone. I chose to play a service that takes us to Stonebridge Park Depot, so not the whole line, but the best part of it, I guess. And this time we will be running the 1972 Mark II tube stock train with the London Underground in the 2021 timetable. You might know that Dovetail Games provided an updated timetable for this DLC that was part of the original 3 core routes of Train Sim World 2. And yeah, after a while they provided this Bakerloo 2021 timetable that has some services for the silver version, that is I think of the New Journeys pack a train, and it also has some of the 1938 tube stock in it, and it has nice traffic, especially in the areas overground. You have 66s towing freight trains that are going along the West Coast Main Line and crossing over at Willesden Junction, I think it is, and you have an HST standing around and some Mark II cars. So this is actually a nice thing. I don't know if it got all the credit that it deserved, but those are the things that sometimes go unnoticed, that Dovetail is actually doing stuff to maintain their old routes, even if it takes some time, usually. The Mark II 1972 stock train is one of the trains of the old school variety, I should say, where actually a lot of things are animated and are working. A lot of security systems and test systems that you usually do not need when playing the game, because you never get in a situation where you would use those systems or need to use them, but still they work, or a lot of them work. Can see you've never played this older medals. Yeah, I actually went through the timetable with one train. If you stick to one head code number, like 226 in this case, here, you can see after the dash how many journeys this train is doing during the day. So 226D-1 will be the first journey, typically from a depot to the first service, and then it goes on. So the train does some journeys along the road, not always the same. Sometimes it's a short service between Elephant and Castle and Queen's Park. Sometimes it's a long service between Elephant and Castle and Harrow and Wealdstone. Sometimes you go to Stonebridge Park for a little rest, and this is a service where we go from Elephant and Castle, the southern terminus of the Bakerloo Line, to Stonebridge Park, where we stable this train for the night. Pocket Snickers, hey, good afternoon to you. Nice to have you here on the stream. Yeah. So I already mentioned that I'm a fan of this train. before we actually start, I want to go very slowly through the controls and stuff and then restart the service so that we can enjoy this a bit. So what would I do to start the train? Obviously the control key needs to be in, then you can't really see it from this perspective. You can see it better from here. Now this is what we just put in, and we need to turn it by 90 degrees so that the train is actually activated, and then you have a quite intricate starting up procedure, because you have to put in the selector key into the reverser, switch it to Enter, then push the dead man's handle on the main controller and move it to emergency. You hear the air brakes hissing and the audible valve. You then move it all the way around to off and release. You can actually read all this on the handle here. What is off for the traction and release for the brakes. Then you can push the audible warning valve reset and then put it back into Rio 1 and hold this wee 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 sound is always, if you put it into Rio 1 and hold, what is applying brakes enough so that the train does not roll away, you can actually let go of the dead man's handle without the train getting stopped by the safety system here. Yeah, you can see usually we have to hold it down all the way so that the train knows the driver is here and active, and the Rio 1 and hold position is the only one where you can release it to use your hand to scratch your face or whatever you want to do. So this is the position where you would leave it in a station, for example. And only if you went through this circle from shutdown via emergency to off and release and back to Rio 1 and hold, you can put the Enter into the selector into forward, and then you are able actually to apply some traction. Well, what we have to do still, we would have to put the, where are we going? Stonebridge Park, right? The destination board. That does not work automatically. We cannot look at it right now because the external cameras underground are very limited to one position of camera 3, so we would have to leave the train to look at it, what we will do. And then lights. Lighting is very interesting on this train because underground you want to see stuff, and especially you want to see your speed clock if you're running it without a HUD. And we will see that when we get to the area where we are in the tunnel and where it is dark. If you actually use the gauge lights here, you can turn on the gauge lights, you will see that those reflections that are built into the graphical representation, they make it almost impossible to see the hand when you are supposed to stay under 25 miles per hour, for example. So this can be quite tricky. So I found out the best way is actually to leave cap lights on. So the switch for cap lights on is on by default, by the way. But you have a second switch for cap lights where you can select if you want them on the left, on the right, or both. Those two neon lamps. And what I've found is that if you put them to the right, this is enough so that you can actually read your speed clock very nicely and without those reflections, and you see actually the signs in the tunnel better with the cap lights than with the headlights alone. So this is my custom setup. Obviously you don't need to use that. The other stuff that here, a lot of it is actually working, like the brake test. You can test the brakes by putting them into on, then the orange lights light up, and you can set the emergency brakes to active, then this red light should light up in addition, and then you release it again, and then after a while the green light should come on. If the brake test worked, yes, and it worked, and then you can turn it off again. This stuff here is that prevents the train from rolling backwards. This stuff you need actually if you are spadding out and the trip cock gets activated, then you have here some sort of a device that controls you to that you don't get too fast after the spat. And this thing here, if you want to reverse, actually, what you can do with the reverser, obviously, you would have to cut out the reverse lockout first. Otherwise, you cannot move your train backwards, because it is actually a no-go to run an underground train backwards, because it's typically super dangerous, because with the underground you can't see if there is a train coming backwards on the lines. I don't know, see the radar, if you run your trains backwards in Prague metro, at least on the London Underground, from what I have heard and learned, it is a no-go. Also, the windows underground cannot be open without first cutting out a system that stops the train if you open the window, right? So, because obviously running in the tunnel and sticking your head out can be a quite disastrous thing to do. What else would we have to do? We would have to turn on the saloon lights so that our passengers can have some lighting. If we forget to do that or turn them off deliberately, they are still not sitting in the dark, because there is a battery-powered emergency light, so that people don't get panicked in case that the proper light goes out. There are actually things where you can cut out the EP brakes. We talked about this in last week's video. Also, this train has EP brakes, so, and 2-pipe Westinghouse brake for a backup system. It's all in this handle too, and the traction system is not so unlike the system that we have on the 1938 Tubester. Never do that on Prague Metro. Yeah, you don't do that. You don't run a metro train backwards. This is why they have two ends and are supposed to stay on their lines that go into one direction. Okay, this is about what we would have to do. In the cap on the other side, we would have to put the destination board manually, because that does not follow suit automatically. More, according to the safety systems, I think will follow in another video. Oh, some lag spikes there, says AG. I'm sorry to hear that. I hope this will get better during the stream. The game runs smoothly for me. So what they tell you actually here in this screen is new. They give you a crew running number. So not only what train it is and what service number, but also what crew number that is. And judging by that, obviously they change crews every 2 trips back and forth, and then there's a new number. Possibly this indicates that a new driver would take over, and the driver that did the 2 services before is going to have a break until he gets to drive a train again. So let's do it for real. Key on, key enter, emergency, off and release, Rio and hold, audible warning, forward. Did I not go to off and release? Now it works. Obviously I did not go all the way. Rio and hold, enter, and now we should actually be able, before we unlock the doors, let's open the lights, turn on the lights and set the destination board so that the passengers actually know where we are going. Yeah, let's open them now, otherwise we won't have enough time for later. And then we have to rush back to the end of the train. I can't be late with the service because I want to show some signaling stuff going on in Queen's Park, and for that we need to stay on the timetable, otherwise we won't see it. Yeah, you see it's actually dark. And Stonebridge we're going, I think I set it to the wrong thing. But here, for example, you can see with the gauge lights these interference. Well, I don't have the time to show it properly, so don't show it at all, I guess. Let me pass, I've got a train to run. Okay. Close the doors. Stonebridge Park, I actually did it. It works, okay. First we will have a limit of 10. Yeah, like last time, I tried to memorize all the speed limits so that I don't need to check the pause screen too often and stay on time anyway. So this is the area where I can actually swap sides before you get into Elephant and Castle Station, and then we're going into the left tunnel. Don't trust this 15 board, you see. This 15 board typically would allow you to go 15 as soon as the tip of the train passes it, but the game does not implement it. You have to pass the next signal before you can actually go accelerate to 15. But this is so far the only false friend sign that I've seen so far. Before we get to Lambeth North, we will get to a point where we can accelerate to 25 and then even to 30 and stop with 30 at Lambeth North. You can see on the traction we have Shunt, series and parallel, just like on the 38 tube stock. If you want to know more about that, there is a video on my YouTube channel about the 38 tube stock dealing with the traction control of that kind. Now we should get to the 25 sign. You might see it flicker by on the right. About here, it's a T sign actually. Oh, I missed the 25 sign, so I will be definitely late. T sign means termination of a speed limit, so we can accelerate to line speed, and line speed is 30 here. So I have to make up time. That is always annoying because that route is quite hard to stay on the timetable anyway, but we will see where we end up with. 20 when we leave the station, and then again accelerate to 25 and 30 before we have to slow down to 20 again when entering Waterloo station. Here's the 25, I wager. Here's the 25, yes. I can accelerate to 30 because here's the T-board, allowing us to go to 30. And after the next turn we will already see the station, so we can go to coast and slow down to 20 again, because just before we leave the tunnel there will be the 20 sign here on the right. I have no idea if you can see that on the stream because it is only visible for split seconds. You can hit the close door button as soon as the yellow circle is at the top right corner of your train in the icon. Start releasing the brakes as soon as the yellow circle fills. And then yank it to parallel. This train actually likes it if you yank the master controller into parallel just from the start, more or less. Unlike the 38 stock. Oh. This is 2530 for Embankment. Does the game set up the lights correctly on Bakerloo? I think it does, actually. So the headlights and taillights should be set up correctly. Also the stabling light is off typically without you having to do that. But since you cannot really look at your train from the outside due to the limited external cameras, I cannot verify that. Would have to walk around the train sometime to check that out. Charing Cross is again 30 straight. Funny mirror reflections. Yeah, that's true. But it's actually reflecting this mirror. It's not just a dumb thing like the rear view mirrors on some trains. Yeah. Braking is a bit aggressive because I have to make up time. That was Charing Cross. Next one is, if I'm not mistaken, Piccadilly. Where we will be limited to 20 until we get to Piccadilly. Piccadilly is a bit a special station because on the right of our stopping position, still at the station, you can see the area where you can cross over from the other line. And this is a place where there is some special signaling going on. This is why I want to stop there and look at the presentation and then go on with the drive afterwards. I think there is not a service in the game that actually makes use of this possibility to cross over at Piccadilly. But still, the part is in the game. Here you can see on the right side it's like the tunnel wall being cut off, and this is a connector to the line going south here. So Piccadilly. I want to save it here in case that we want to have a closer look on the signaling here later. And get you on with the presentation. Pocket Snickers, what are you saying? The first time I tried this, I didn't know you should use max forward always and was extremely behind by 3 stops. Yeah, same here, same here. But it is really an aggressive line to drive. You brake late and you accelerate more or less to the maximum within the first 1 or 2 seconds, and make sure you release your brakes to the first step so that it does not take too long to get the air out of your brake cylinders. So this is a very, very aggressive line to drive, in my opinion, in my experience. But it is big fun, and you have to memorize the speed limits, because you can never react to the signs when they just pop up in front of you. So you need to know when there is a reduction in speed limit upcoming and react to it by heart. Now the signaling. What signaling do we have on the underground, on the Bakerloo line? Actually, we have two parts, the overground part and the underground part, divided by Queen's Park North Depot, what is a bit of an airlock between those two systems, and the part on the overground north of Queen's Park is more or less typical three-aspect signaling that you find in the UK. We have videos on that, so I won't go into that. But the underground signaling is special in a way as that it is actually more or less a two-aspect signaling. We have red and we have green lights, pass and no pass. That is the basic principle, and most of them are automatic signals. We have not talked about automatic signals so far, so let's just have a little look at the principles of automatic signaling. In the United States, we talk about automatic block signaling a lot. That is more or less the same principle, but with more aspects. And here we have a two-aspect system that is with automatic signals typically. So you have those signals, they can show green and they can show red. And they come in distances, and the distance between two signals, normally there are repeaters, we come back to that, but typically is one block, and only one train is allowed in this block as a rule. And as soon as one train is occupying this block, the signal in front of it will show red. This is done by track circuits, and the track circuits detect if there is a train with the wheels short-cutting an electric current between the tracks, and then they can use that to switch the signals at the entrance of this block. If you want to know more about this, you can watch the video about the pulse code cap signaling on the Boston Sprinter. There is a lot of track circuits and how we can use that for signaling actually. And the track circuits can also be used for automatic signals. So this is our train. I hope you like my representation of the London Underground Bakerloo train here in my presentation in PowerPoint. And this train can run. As soon as it runs a signal, a green signal here, and enters the new block with only part of it, the signal at the start of the block will be switched to red, because this track circuit here detects that there is a train in the block, and it will switch the signal to red, so no other train can enter, even if the train goes on. And at the next signal, the same thing happens again. The train passes it, the signal falls to red, and you can see that the train is now in two blocks, this block and this block, so both signals are red, so that no train can enter the block that is already occupied. Even if the train leaves the old block, the signal will not go back to green straight away. Why? Because if in any case the train stops just behind the signal and the other train comes along and does not react to the red signal here, we will talk about this in the safety systems video more in depth. There is a system that can stop the train when it tries to pass a red signal, just like the train stop system on TPWS or the 2000 Hz magnets in PZB. But it does not prevent the spat, but it just stops the train. And if the train got stopped at the red signal, it still hits the train that is just behind the signal. For this reason, typically there is an overlap after every red signal, and the train has to clear this overlap too before the signal at the beginning of the block before can go back to green. So this is the basic automatic signaling system that is used throughout the London Underground, especially on the Bakerloo line here, from what I have learned from sources on the internet. Because unlike other railway carriers, London Underground does not publish its rulebook and on operation procedure things for their employees. I have found on the internet a lot of freedom of information requests of people who wanted to see them, but they chose not to publish it, so I have to go by secondary sources and put them and piece them together. This is why I did not give you the sources so you can read it up. Yeah. Nevertheless, this is what the sources agree on, what is used in automatic signaling on the Bakerloo line. You can distinguish automatic signals from other signals by its number plate. An automatic signal typically starts with an A, so it will have a number like A123 here, and the next one A125. So typically they are numbered in a straight line. Progressing through the line, they can be increasing or decreasing. Depends on whether you are going north or south, and typically you have the odd numbers in one direction and the even numbers in the other direction. So if you're passing signal A123, then the next signal will typically be A125. And from what I have learned, you would always pronounce these numbers like this. Actually, you would probably even say alpha 123 and alpha 125, but never 123. But I was not able to confirm that if they say alpha or use whatever other alphabet to denote those signals. So those are the automatic signals. Yeah, maybe you have seen yellow signals underground even, and I just told you there are only two aspects, green and red. How do the yellow ones come in? Sometimes if the automatic signal is behind a bend or in a place where you can... It's Bravo Charlie. Thank you, ZD Radar. So we would call this Alpha 123, just like in aviation or with the military. Yeah, coming back to the other signal. Sometimes the automatic signal is behind the bend, or you cannot see it from far away. So you want... CD Radio says, I don't know really. Okay, maybe we can confirm that in the comments at some place. Yeah, I wanted to talk about what happens if you can't see the signals from afar. We know that from other signaling systems too. Sometimes there can be repeaters. In the normal British signaling system, you have those banner repeaters, right? That can be 2-aspect or 3-aspect and tell you what the signal will be if you can get around the bend. Here they just look like the other signals too. So even especially when they are green, you cannot really distinguish them just from the aspect alone unless they are showing yellow. This is why they are denoted with a special plaque. They have not a white plate with the number, but a yellow plate with the number, and the number typically starts with an Romeo, if that is the alphabet that they are using. So this would be Romeo 123 or R123. So the number always corresponds with the automatic signal that they are repeating, but it has a letter R in the beginning, so that you know the signal is not an automatic signal, but it is just repeating the signal. So it will always show the same aspect. If it is green, it will show green. If it is red, it will not show red, it will show yellow. This is where the yellow comes in. Obviously, if it is a red signal, you would have to stop in front of it and cannot pass it, and then it does not make any sense because you would have to stop here in front of the red signal. And this is why I chose a red. It is a repeater signal, so the yellow aspect can only appear on a repeater signal here. By R for repeater. Yeah, this is the idea. So it is not the way that we would use a repeater signal. In normal signaling in the UK, we would probably call it a distance signal, because there we have the yellow aspects on a distance signal. Some signals cannot show a red but only green and yellow, or double yellow, and will be a distance signal then. And this is a bit the idea. R for run the race or not, please don't do. But it will have a yellow plate, and they have those yellow plates in the game, and sometimes you can actually see them swish by when you're going through the tunnels. And sometimes you get to places where you have more than one light seemingly on the same signal, like this, but then actually it is two signals put in the same place. Then you have the automatic signal and the repeater for the next automatic signal. The distance between the automatic signal can vary a lot, so there can be in very short succession, or there can be more room between them to run. Depends on what you need and how much is happening in between. And this is typically the situation. You're running, you see a double green, for example. It looks like a double green, but it is actually the automatic signal, and underneath typically the repeater for the next signal, telling you that also the next automatic signal will be green. So that is the basic system that works in the underground here, with the automatic and repeater signals. On stations and junctions, it is obviously a bit more complicated, because here the automatic system and the track circuits can't really know where the train is supposed to go. So you need someone, a signaler or a station master, to control the signals. And for that, you typically, if you have a line with a diverging line to a siding here, for example, where you can stable your train, you would have a signal that can tell the driver where the train is going. And for that, we will see that in Queen's Park, for example, you can have with your light signal one of those discs. If you have watched my video about the semaphore signals in the British signalling system on the West Somerset Railway, then you might remember that those shunting signals used there look quite alike, but they have still a light in it, right? They have it incorporated more or less in a lens in this red bar. The ones that you encounter on the underground, they don't have a light. They are just the disc signals, and if they are in a horizontal way, they block your way, obviously, and if they are turned by 45 degrees, they allow passage. And if you're coming to a signal that shows you that mounted on the same post, then you know you are allowed to pass on the main line and you are not going into the siding. So here the signal is on, and here the signal is off, and the light signal would be an semi-automatic signal. That means it acts as an automatic signal in case the block is occupied, then it will probably drop to red, but the signal can still set it to a red deliberately if he wants to direct the train in a siding, for example. So you would have on one post the semi-automatic signal and the shunt signal in the same place, and they get different names. They don't have an A and they don't have an R, but they get a two-letter code that tells you what signaling box is controlling those signals. On as far as I understood the coding on the Bakerloo line, they always start with a B for the Bakerloo line, and then the letter telling you what signal box it is. And starting at Queen's Park, what is B, I think, so BB 4 or Bravo 4 would be Queen's Park, and BM, as in my example, would be Baker Street, if I'm not confused at this point. So, but there are lists on the internet where you can actually find that out with what signaling box is controlling them. So there's actually a guy sitting in a signaling box, maybe on the platform or behind a window, and controlling those signals, or more modern in a bigger command center where they control a large amount of signals, and not with levers necessarily, but with computers, obviously. But the idea is still the same. Those signals are not working solely automatic, driven by the track circuits, but they can still be switched by a signaler. So what does that mean? We have already talked about. So the green line tells you here the main line is open. If you're coming from the left to the right, the siding is blocked by the signal. What do we want? What do we have to do as a signaler if we want to allow the train in the siding? Obviously, we have to block the main line. At this point, both signals are on. The train cannot go anywhere, and then we switch that shunt signal to off so that the train can go into the siding. Another thing, another oddity in naming the signals is that the last automatic signal before you get to a controlled section where you have semi-automatic signals has, from what I have read, typically an X instead of an A. So that would tell you, if you're using the alphabet, Alpha Bravo Charlie, that would be X-ray 127. This signal here, and this is an automatic signal, but from what I have read, you have to treat it like a semi-automatic signal because you're getting into a controlled area. Since I do not know the operating rules, I do not actually know how a driver has to treat a signal as a semi-automatic signal, so I can just repeat this line that I've read somewhere without knowing what how an automatic signal needs to be treated in a different way than a semi-automatic signal. Maybe you have to call the signaler if you are held in front of it, for example, because that is the rule. What was it? 55 procedure. If a train is held at the red signal, you have to inform the signaler unless you have any reason not to do it. Maybe that's that, but I don't know. If anyone knows, please confirm or tell me in the comments what actually you need to do in a different way if you're encountering an X signal that is an automatic signal but is the last one in front of a controlled area. So that is our platform again, and the platform obviously has exit signal again. So for example, here a train is sitting here and the signal is switched to green so that the train can leave. We have seen this on the line a lot, that the exit signal actually sits in the tunnel already, and that the driver who is sitting in the tip of the train can see the signal in front of his train or her train, but the staff on the platform can't, because the train is actually blocking the view to the signal even if they got an angle to see it. And for that we have repeaters on the platform in different shapes. Sometimes they are oriented in this way, sometimes they are oriented vertically too. They can just repeat the exit signal at the station. That is a bit like the Fahrtanzeiger that we have seen on the Niedertalbahn stuff for the German system. It is more like, it is not for the driver, it is for the platform stuff, that they can actually see what the exit signal is showing. Or you know that from the normal British signaling with the off indicator that you see on stations sometimes, that informs the station staff and the driver, if he needs to, that a certain signal that it corresponds to is switched to the off position. In here the signal just repeats the aspect of the exit signal, and if it is green it shows green, the platform repeater, yeah, that's what it is called. And if the exit signal is red, then the platform repeater will show yellow, obviously. And how can you distinguish a platform repeater from a different signal? The platform repeater does not have any number plate at all. It is just sitting there. You see them a lot in the game, and don't get confused. They are not signals that you have to adhere to. They are just repeating the exit signal for the benefit of the platform staff. So that is that. In case you have two sidings actually that you can probably go to, the shunt signal is not enough. And on the West Somerset, you know that you have then two discs on top of each other. I don't know if that can happen on the underground. Typically you don't have the room for that, but what you can use is a theater indicator that gives you a number. In Queen's Park you see that a lot, and in other stations too. We will see that in Queen's Park No, we won't see it because we are not going into the depot. But typically when you are stabling your train or getting it into Queen's Park North Depot for use of a shunting neck, then you get a 1 or a 2, or starting a service at Queen's Park, you typically start in the depot and then you drive into the station and get the 1 or a 2 telling you where you are supposed to go. And at least the way the game handles it is that it is always counted from left to right. So we have 2 sidings here, the left one and the second one on the left, and so the 1 would denote you're going into the first siding, counted from the left, and if you get a 2, you're going in the second siding, counted from the left. Please note that the main line is not counted in that way. It is only the sidings that are counted here in that way. So this is where you get the 1 for here and the 2 for there, or not a 2 and a 3. So much for that. Speedboards. We have talked about this when we were driving. They look like this in the underground, so they are square. They have not this round form with the red rim that you know from the normal network rail signaling on the British Isles, but they are rectangular, white, and have a black number on it. And they show you, obviously, the allowed speed limit. And you can get this sign, a T, a termination or terminus sign, and this terminates a speed restriction, meaning you can go back to line speed. So you need to know what is line speed at this particular piece of track. So obviously there must exist some sort of a document that tells you what is line speed on what parts of the line, actually, because that can vary, and it does vary in the game. It is sometimes 30, sometimes 35. I don't know if there are parts with an even lower line speed. But obviously you can check it in the pause screen what the game actually thinks that line speed is at this point. So if you start with a line speed of 35, you get this sign. Obviously, as soon as the tip of your train is passing this sign, you have to reduce your have reduced your speed to 25. Same here with the 30, and then passing the T sign. Well, no, here it is actually not the same. It is worth noting that if the speed limit increases here from 23 to 30, in underground, it is enough that the tip of the train passes this sign, and you can accelerate. You don't have to wait until the whole train has passed this sign, what you would do in the overground world, but in the underground world, you can accelerate already when the tip of your train has passed this sign. This is a speciality for that, and it was not always like that. I remember that it was actually fixed in an update, and thus works quite well in most cases. And the same with the T-board. As soon as the tip of the train passes the T-board, you can go back to line speed. Sometimes you can see those signs. They look like the typical speed restriction signs that you know from network rail signaling, but they have a gray border, not a red one. And those you typically get when you're going into depots, so out of the straight line but into a depot. So they are typically very slow speed restrictions, like 10 or 5 or 15. And then obviously after passing this sign, you are back to, or you have to adhere to that speed limit. What I don't really know for sure and have not been able to establish is if those signs you have to pass with your full train in case they actually give you an increase in speed limit, like from 5 to 10, for example. It might be so that you have to pass the signs with the whole of your train to actually get out of this limit, but I don't know. I have not found any operating rules describing those gray rimmed signs and if they are different from the underground signs, and I have not seen them underground, only overground in depots belonging to the London Underground. So it might be like this, but I cannot really confirm that it is like that. Other things that you see underground a lot, even if they are most probably not functional in the game, I wanted to talk about what they actually do. Sometimes you see those grayish boxes with three black lamps on it, and if you look at them closer, you see that tell you they are rail gap indicators. Now, what is that? A rail gap indicator. And in rare instances, you actually find a yellow version of those thingies too. We will see it just when we are going on with our service, because there is one when you're coming into Oxford Circus from Piccadilly. They are just the repeaters to those rail gap indicators. So in some situations where you cannot see the rail gap indicators from far away, you can get the yellow version of them warning you that there is a rail gap indicator coming around the bend. And what do they actually do? This is your line, and you get your energy from the third rail that we have learned in the tube stock 38 stream. And third rails obviously come in segments. They are powered by different substations, so that not one substations can power the whole line, but they will have substations that power the line for a couple of miles, and then the next substation takes over. And sometimes, for whatever reason, those substations and or the third rail needs to be switched off, so that this particular piece of third rail in one section does not provide any energy anymore. And then it would be a bad thing for the train to run into that section. Not only because the train cannot go on if it gets no energy anymore, but also that because the train can bridge the gap between the still energized part of the third rail and the de-energized part of the third rail, because the train can be then the conductor and can bridge it, and then the energy goes into the third rail part where it isn't supposed to be, and this can be devastating if there are actually people working on it. And for that we have the rail gap indicators that tell us that here this part of the line is switched off, and then the rail gap indicators will turn on their red lights, and the repeater will turn on respectively yellow lights, and then you have to stop in front of the red light gap indicator, just as if this is a normal red light, so that you do not run into the de-energized section. At least this is what I read about it in the game. I've never seen this happening. I don't think that is happening, but this would be a great thing for random events, I think. All of a sudden, rail gap indicator on, stop your train, or you're electrocuting a group of workers in front of you. Permissive. Or a scenario, yeah, exactly, or a scenario. Why not? I actually cannot know for sure that there is no scenario anywhere where they are not on. I have never seen them in action, but would be nice. Do you have similar signals in Prague Metro City Radar for that, or how do you get your energy in the trains in a different way where you don't need it? Always things that I never thought about before. Permissive signals. What is that? If you have watched the video on the Birmingham Cross-City line, we have talked a lot about junction signaling, and some of the junctions are controlled with signals that are held at red or yellow until the train has approached with a speed that is slow enough so that the signal can allow the train to pass. So the same thing, or a similar thing, we have on the underground, especially at the point where we are just sitting. Oh, City Rail says we don't have any indicator for powered off third rail. Okay, so they have to tell you in a different way, obviously, and make sure that nobody runs their train into the de-energized part of the section. Probably they will put up a sign in front of it. that at least clatters when you run over it with your train. Why would it be off? For maintenance? I don't know. I think this is the idea, or whatever can happen that makes it necessary to turn off that. I've never noticed a sign, but in Chicago, trains entering the loop lose HEP going over the numerous switches. I see. But then the trains would not run there. Fair point, actually, fair point, you're right. The, oh, we'll have to have a look at this in Chicago, the loop and what happens there. So they lose their head end power, and they are going over the numerous switches. Interesting. Maybe they don't have a third rail on the switches then, because it is too complicated to get you through all the switches. Well, back to our permissive signals, where we are just standing and waiting, and at Piccadilly here, our approach control. In Piccadilly, I told you when we were getting there, there is a possibility where you can get your train from the one line to the other, so that you can actually turn around your train in Piccadilly, coming from Queen's Park, for example, stop at Piccadilly, and then go back to Queen's Park. Obviously switch ends, and then you have a crossover section, and this crossover section is signaled with a row of permissive signals. And how do they work? We can only see the signals in the game, but we cannot actually see them at work. So we are sitting here in this position. We came from the left and are sitting in this position at the moment, and a train that would have come, for example, here, this line, I did not drew the line that is coming from Queen's Park, would have gone here and sitting on the other half of the station, and then the driver can maybe switch ends and go back, and want to cross over and go back to Queen's Park in front of us, for example. Obviously this is dangerous, because our train can start and this train can start, so we need signaling for doing that. And what would we have here? We have this signal Alpha 1000 that is always at red in the game. At least I have never seen it change to any other aspect, and this is a permissive signal, and it is held at red, and if the train actually is supposed to cross over here, the train approaches, well, just let's have the signaling layout complete before we put the train in. Further on the line, obviously, we have our automatic signals, and in between there are a couple of more signals in very short succession. We will just drive by them when we go on with our service. And what do they do? Obviously, we are waiting at this exit signal at the moment. So our train would be standing here waiting at this exit signal. So the signal we need so that we can block this line, the line that we came on, and allow the other train to cross over in front of us. This is the platform. This is the other train. The train comes here and has to approach this signal slowly, and when it gets close enough to the signal, again, this can be done with track circuits or with other sensors, probably with track circuits, with very short track circuits. They can measure how long the train needs to get from one track circuit into the other. If the train is slow enough, then it can switch from red to yellow and allow the train to cross over here. As soon as the train passes this signal, it will fall back to red, obviously, like the signals always do, because now the block ahead is occupied, and the train is approaching the next signal that is held at red until the train gets close enough, slow enough, and then it switches to yellow and let the train pass. And this happens again on the next signal. Again, the signal is held at red until the train is slow enough, close enough, then it will allow the train to pass with yellow. And the last one in the line will do the same, but eventually and finally will give the train a green light so that the train can go on back to Queen's Park with normal speed. Why would we do this? To ensure that the train for the whole crossover process is going really slow and not faster than the speed that is allowed by this system. Obviously the train, I only have one car more or less here in my animation, but the train will be longer, so it will take all this track to finally get through the crossover part and then accelerate. At the same time, our train is held here at this red signal. It's a Kurzzug, yes, what I have here, but the whole thing is not for Kurzzüge, it is for the normal length trains. So you can see approach control with the same thing that we have had on the Birmingham Cross City Junction signaling a video for the underground, and I've watched a video on YouTube where you can actually see this happening in the game. I'm afraid there is no service that is doing that, but this is the idea of permissive signals in the underground signaling system. At the same time, obviously, as soon as the train passes the signal, it will go back to red, and then the train can go to Queen's Park or whatever. In case for us we want to go to Queen's Park and without crossing over, we don't need to slow down at this point, so we want to set all this row to green. If we want to allow this train to go straight along, we can set all those signals to green, and then we don't have to approach the signals slowly. We can just go along the line along green signals, and this is why we get so many green signals in a short succession going along this line, what we will just do as soon as I'm done with the presentation here. And those signals are the very rare signals on the underground that actually have 3 lamps for 3 aspects, red, green and yellow. For that reason, I think. And multi-home signals, we will talk about that in Queen's Park, or in shortly before we get to Queen's Park. I hope we will get there fast enough so that we actually see them in action. So, back in the game. This is the area that I was just talking about. When we okay, because I was out of the game. Good thing I saved, right? Good thing I saved so that we don't lose too much money. How was the video called? The one in the Birmingham Cross City? Oh no, the video what I watched, Piccadilly crossover or something like this. Crossover at Piccadilly and Baker Street, because at Baker Street the same thing happens in the same way. Here on the right you will see the signal A1000 and the crossover part, and here you can see, oops, one of the signals here were actually still at yellow. It is yellow and is switching to green so that we can pass. And this is the one that switches to green and lets us pass. So what we were able to see is that those approach control signals turned from yellow to green for us. And now prepare for the rail gap repeater. Yeah. I'm losing more and more time because I'm too distracted to see my signals. We can accelerate to 30 here when going into Oxford Circus. But I think I have 1 minute somewhere in Maida, Vale where I can get back to the timetable. Now going into Oxford Circus, we will have here on the left rail gap repeater. Very soon. Here, it was there. And here's the rail gap repeater. So maybe the lag is so bad on the stream that you cannot actually see stuff like this. But it's there. If you want to replay it in the game, you can find it. No problem. Oi, oi, oi. What is with my brakes? In this video that I talked about CD radar, you can also see that there are additional signals at the Piccadilly platform, like a shunt ahead marker in case you want to do the same thing in the different direction, so going back to Elephant and Castle. So I'm speeding a bit. Let's see. Let's get back on my line. But now I have to focus a bit on my driving. Can't blunder about like this. Now there should be the 30 sign. Here it comes, check, and now we can accelerate to 30 when going into Regents Park. Regents Park is always a nice station to approach because you always have very straight tunnels to get there. And I might have mentioned that Regents Park is actually my favorite park in London. Okay, so I hope you don't mind me grinding to a stop like this. I have to make up some time. Baker Street, I think, is also a straight. He said Papa signal but not Romeo, so me confused. Okay, maybe the Romeo. What did he say for the R? Baker Street is 30. Yeah, exactly. I remembered that correctly. After Baker Street, I think it's Marylebone. Going straight to 35. Short. Oops! I'm actually left early because I made up so much time. Well, I guess this got me fired. I know the correct stopping points for the game, but it's too bad they are too far to see the cameras. That is true! That is actually true. I have to give you that. The stopping points could be adjusted a bit better. Because you don't see the cameras. Sometimes they are too far away, sometimes they are... You have to stop in the tunnel, can't see the cameras anymore. For example, like this would be a nice stopping point, and it's only 499. It's not the sweet spot, even if I stopped at 2 yards. As if they work. This one is good. Yeah. Yeah, but if I went to the 500 point stop, actually, I might have been outside of the camera reach. Well, you can see through the left window. I guess that is the idea anyway. They are collectibles, yeah, especially the dark ones. But I never really care about collectibles. Edgware Road, it says 35 too? To Edgware Road? Yeah, 35. So here 500, and I cannot see the cameras because they're just behind. But this, I think this is okay. Paddington, I think this is 30 here, and then to 20. This is a limit that you have to memorize. I think you get one signal and then the limit is at the second signal. I always use the signals for orientation. Like here is signal 1. No, it is signal 2 and the limit is at signal 3. Here. There it will be, just like around the corner. Yeah, there it was. See? Oh, it's still a bit more. Slow down too early. Anyway, here it is. The 20. So you can actually go to the third signal here before you slow down. I sometimes like to have lines with no collectibles done at all. And then I get off my train to do something and run into a route board or something like that. Ah, what did I do? Open the doors on the wrong side. Warwick Avenue. That is 35. Line speed 35. Now that is here is opening the doors on the wrong side. Yeah. This is why you should not be streaming when driving a train. Because you cannot read your chat and do whatever and focus on driving the train properly. And I have to admit, here on this route you can this is hitting your heart if you're not focusing properly, because everything is so Accelerate hard, brake hard, hit the right button, don't wait too long. Thank you. Are we gonna see the cameras? Maybe in Maida Vale. We should have some time in Maida Vale. Ah yeah, thank you anyway. It's a good job driving subway trains. I think so, yeah. But what I think I would find hard personally if I had to drive trains in real life is really being focused all the time. And not getting bored and not having your mind wander. Not wanting to listen to the news. Okay, let's see where the cameras are here. Maida Vale. Well, they are always behind some marker, but we can't see them. Kilburn Park. Honestly, from what I've heard, that's not an issue if you're driving in real life, because you have to deal with passengers as well, what Pocket Snickers say. I have no idea how much passenger contact you actually have in real life as a subway driver. I guess during driving, not too much, because that would be a bit dangerous. Depends on the line. Cameras. So, and now let's speed out to Queen's Park to see the next thing that I wanted to show. And for that, before we get there, let's have a look at it on the presentation. What we are supposed to see there, if I'm not too slow after all. Multi-home signals. The situation is, what is Pocket Snicker saying, but on the CTA at least they are the only one who talks to passengers beside other passengers. Alright, yeah, I guess in situations this is actually a thing that the driver needs to do. But I don't think during driving, no? Well, home signals, platform. This is the platform and this is a train sitting there, and it's waiting there at a red exit signal, obviously. And the next train is already approaching but cannot enter the station, obviously, because there's a train sitting in the station. So the next train approaching is held by a red signal. So normally, what would we have to do? We would have to switch the exit signal to green here, and then the train at the platform can slowly start accelerating, leave the platform, then the signal here switches back to red, obviously, and then the train can leave. And from what we have learned, we have to wait until the train has cleared the overlap behind the exit signal before we can switch the entry signals to green and the train can enter. So this can actually take a while, and during this time the area in the station is not used, and this can actually be a problem if we want to run more and more trains to transport more and more passengers through our line. So what can we do? Let's put this train back. We add a couple of signals more along the platform, and we will see this is something that is done in Köln Hauptbahnhof, for example, in Germany, with Zugdeckungssignale, but here with normal yellow and red signals. So we have a couple of signals along the line, and what do? The train is clear to leave, so we switch the exit signal to green. The train can leave its position. Obviously, on passing, the signal is switched back to red. It can pass on, and then there comes a point where the train has cleared the last bit of the platform area past this signal here. And what can we do then? We can switch the entry signal already to green, because the train that is leaving here is protected by a red light here. If this is done just the moment that the back of the train has left this block, or if there is a little overlap behind it, that depends on the situation, so it doesn't necessarily need to be that imminent. But the idea is the train is leaving the station area, passing a signal that protects it, so we can switch already the entry signal to green, and then this train can start entering the station area while the other train is leaving. And as soon as the train has cleared the next block section, obviously here for the entering train, the entry signal, as soon as he passed it, is switched back to red, and this signal here, because this block now is cleared, can be set to yellow, allowing this train here to pass it when it gets into the station area, because now this red signal is protecting the exiting train. And so it goes on. One train leaves, the other drives into it, and one by one those signals are switched from red to yellow until the train is out. Then the exit signal is still protecting it, will probably stop the train from leaving, what is not a problem because this train has to stop at the station anyway. And obviously those signals switch back to red as soon as the entering train passes them, and as soon as the other train is out of the block plus overlap maybe, then this signal can go to yellow and the train can sit in the station and stop at the exit signal. So for that we can shorten the dead time at the station platform between two trains, and the trains can enter and leave gradually during the same time. As I said, in Germany this is done with Zugdeckungssignalen that you can find in Köln Hauptbahnhof, for example. I don't think that this is a thing in the game. In Würzburg you can find those too, in the SK whatever, in the Schnellfahrstrecke Kassel-Würzburg, SKW. But I don't think that they actually work like this. But here in the game they should work. At least I have seen them work. Maybe we are too late now for them to be shown to us, but we will see. We will get out the tunnel every instant now. I just drove the service before, so that I know that it happens, but then I was not distracted by the chat and streaming, so that I was actually much faster and better on the timetable. Yeah, but we can see that the entry signal is at red. Here we still got greens, and here we've got a caution, and the entry signal is held at red, so we cannot enter the station area because there is a train sitting inside. So I went deliberately faster than I was allowed, and you can see on the right side those are the intermediate signals that I was talking about. Now it is green. On the left side up there, this is the station repeater that, or the platform repeater that we have been talking about before. The train is leaving, we can enter, and now the signals on the red are switching one by one to yellow while the train is leaving, and the exit signal is held at red. And on the top left here you can see the platform repeater. Yeah, I'm happy that I actually... The dogs were enjoying the presentation. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. AJ is running about taking care of the dogs. But what the problem is, I will find out later. So whatever. This signal is actually quite an interesting one because it has a lot to offer. You can see that it is a semi-automatic controlled signal, a B, Bakerloo Line, and B for Queen's Park signaling box. It has the number 32, and it has the signal for the main line and the signal for the shunting line, and in the middle there's a theatre indicator for 2 shunting lines. We have a rail gap indicator here that is often we have a co-acting signal so that we can see the signal from our train even if we can't see the main signal up here. Co-acting is just a repeater for the signal on top of it. And the signal even has pig's ears, those little lights on the side that sometimes make it easier to read the signal from the cab if you are standing close to it. We have them on modern LED signals too. I think you can see them on the Birmingham Cross City line. And yeah. Also this signal has it. So the main line is to the left, this is where we are going, and 2 shunting lines that are controlled with the shunting disc straight ahead and to the right. And sometimes you have services that turn around here at Queen's Park and they would use those 2 shunting lines in the middle of the North Depot as a shunting neck. Just like this one train that is sitting inside it, and this will be 1 and 2 on the theatre indicator. While we are running through the leftmost line in the depot, what is the through line? And you might have seen we have gotten an 10 limit with a red rimmed disc sign, indicating that we are now out of London Underground signalling territory, but back in London Overground, what means network rail controlled signalling territory. And this is why we get a yellow signal that has this black plate, WS13. So this is no more London Underground signalling, but Overground signalling now. So, what do you say? In Chicago there's only the driver and they have to deal with issues with the passengers. Oh yeah. I guess this is really hard for a train driver if they have to deal with the issues of the passengers as well as driving the train, staying on the timetable. Not causing any mayhem. I find it so annoying if people are talking to a bus driver during the ride and asking them how they get to the house of their grandmother when they get off at a certain stop. So next stop will be Kensal Green. We will probably not make it to the line speed of 45 until we get there. We are late because we had to go through this 10 miles bottleneck. Till we get to 300 yards, I think we can accelerate, and then we start slowing down. If we are at 150 at 30 miles, that should be good. Sometimes those lags, they harm your braking effort, I think. So, cameras. No, we went too far for the cameras here. Willesden Junction, there is a limit to 30 on the way. What is okay, because we are running under a yellow anyway. What is Brumlovka business? CD radar. It's a Prague thing. BB. So, limit to 30 is incoming here, and I actually missed it because I was spending too much time trying to find out what Brumlovka business my dogs have. Anyway, now we're passing the HST train that is parked there behind that fence, but sometimes can give you a bit of a lag. And Gronk, I think it is. And then some Mark II cars. Yeah, this is what gives us the lags. But still, I really appreciate that they put some traffic on the tracks here. Even though it gets laggy a bit. I think I can hear a freight train running somewhere. Is there a freight train somewhere running about? Yeah, see! A Class 66 pulling a freight train. Maybe we can see if we're fast enough. But we will have to wait until 1909. Now we can see it from here. And it is slow, so we will catch up. So dogs, are you okay? Or is anything going on? They're not saying anything, so I guess it's okay. So here back to 45. So we're actually going through this underpass with the freight train running. Dogs are okay, thank you AJ. Then I can focus a bit better. Don't know if you can hear on the stream the freight train on the bridge above us. And we're going for our stop in Harlesden. The dogs are a sweet part on the stream. Thank you very much. They will be very happy to hear that. And the dogs are always happy as soon as the stream is over, so they can go out with me and have their nightcap. So, Harlesden. Freight train is gone by now. And we are sitting in Harlesden. Why we have to wait so long in Harlesden, I have no idea. In the last audiobook that I was listening to, Harlesden was mentioned as a great place where you can go if you feel like being mugged. I have no idea if that is true or not. Maybe we should close the doors anyway, just in case. I prefer dog on grass rather than dog on floor sounds. Yeah. Okay. I think the dogs prefer it on grass as well. Yesterday I actually happened to be in the cab of a real locomotive for the first time in my life. It was quite funny. Because there was a fair in a freight yard close to my place. No, it was actually a live locomotive that was just taken out of service, and they actually got all the types of locomotives that you would find on German routes, freight locomotives, like Vectrons, Trucks 1, Trucks 2, Trucks 3, even a Baureihe 155. Why did I open the doors now? Because I was telling stories about locomotives. It was interesting to see, because from the game you know all that stuff and all the controls and levers, but have never touched them or seen them in real life. No, it was not moving. It was stabled. There was the possibility where you could ride in the cab of a V90, but I didn't, because you would have to queue for that. And I would rather inspect the stabled locomotives. But you could... I was actually able to walk about in the engine room and move levers and check this stuff out. And there was the driver, the real driver to this locomotive, inside answering questions. Funny enough, after 2 or 3 questions that I asked, the driver asked me whether I am driving for DB Cargo as well. And I learned that in Austria they are using ETCS level 2 on some freight lines. And just like the Americans do, they don't use the air brakes on their locomotive. Whereas in Germany, they use the air brakes on the locomotive. Yes, I'm theoretically I'm a professional. So, we actually reached the end of our service, not out of our service, but the last stop at any rate. Stonebridge Park. After some distracted driving. You can see the shunting signal that we're getting here is different. It is not the disc that we have in the underground system, but this is national rail signaling again. We get the two white lights along with the red signal, allowing us to pass it, and an indicator that we are going on the first possibility to the left in the yard. What would we do? Obviously, we would set our destination marker to not in service. We might switch off the lights in the train, and then, do you do that in Prague Metro? Go along the train and kick out everyone that is still sitting there. Like those guys. Please leave the train. We're going to the depot if you don't want to stay here during night. You might want to leave. But it's actually cool that they have people standing about it. I don't know that they were doing this. I thought they were just sitting. Oh, we cannot go. Oh, we can go here. Yeah. I approach your approach to US huge trains. I live between two lines that have to do 14L rules. Oh, that must be quite a nuisance, mustn't it? All these 14L honking. But thank you very much. I actually love those huge US trains. I think that is something that people here in Europe can only dream about. Those monsters. It's miles away, okay. Driver only check up first two cars. The other three are checked by station supervisor stuff. Ah, great. No, I don't want to leave the service. I just want to close the doors. Okay, guys, please leave the train. Otherwise, you will have to sleep in the train, in the depot. So what would you do, actually, if people don't leave the train and you want to go to the depot? Gotta call the cops, no? Only at 4 AM that they honk the horns. Oh, Jesus. It's always leggy when you move around, says AJ. Well, the guy was interested even in Czech railway rules, so I'm impressed. Talking about me. Yes, I am. And I am still trying to learn Czech to understand the rules. But it is like many of the Slavic languages. A language where you sometimes wonder why it was really necessary to have an exception to that rule, and another exception, and another exception. And if you have a perfectly fine word for something, why have a second one and a third one? So on. We're going through the train wash here, by the way. And I don't know if you can see that on the stream, but this lighting is actually working really well, in my opinion. how the light of the setting sun gets reflected by the train on the right side. It's one of the hardest Slavic languages. Yes. Here probably we would have to stop because there is a stop sign, and we would have to call the station master or the depot master probably with this button here. Actually, we can call the signaller, we can call the depot and yard master, and this would be line control. That is the guy who is in control of everything that happens on the line. The old man, as the guy said that made this one video that you referred me to, Pocket Snickers. I actually watched it. That was a good video. Thank you again for that one. I really liked the way that this guy does his videos. This thing up here, by the way, is not for communication with the superiors. It is, I think, for announcements for the passengers. Like you can have certain announcements stored here on the keys and have them played back automatically. Is the back of my train through the train wash? No. It's really a long train, this 72 tube stock. In the World of Subways 3 game, it is working. Ah, cool. World of Subways 3. Now we are through the car wash. And the train is neat and proper, but we are still not out of the limit. And then another game I have to look up. World of Subways 3. By Aerosoft. Aerosoft that also do the Suzy simulator. Now we can actually go 15 here. And stable our train in the depot. So, this is where our train can sleep overnight. I think that the service is done. And if we want... Well, I don't want to see the debriefing. That was too much chaos in driving. But what we still can do is obviously, it is already set to not in service. Make sure that the saloon lights are off and then get our... What would we do? We would put it in Rio 1, maybe in Inter, and then get the brakes to shut down. Empty the brake pipe, shut down, off, select the key out. I think we have to, no, not the heating, the cab lights, off, and then the control key is still in. We have to switch it out first. Where is it? Here, off and out. So every light that we have now is shown by the battery. What we haven't done actually, because we were talking about stuff, was that the second but last stop is typically done not using the EP brakes, but using the Westinghouse brake that is as a backup system on the train, just to check if that is still working. And I think we will do it next time. Well, then we should cut out the EP brakes so that we can actually see if it is working properly. When we're doing the safety system video, then I think this is a good idea to come back to that. And then we can leave our train and go home. Well, if we can actually go out here. Yeah, we can go out. Can we still close the door? We can. Okay. And that's the stream for today. We don't have third rail inside depot hall. Okay, so how do the trains move in depot hall then? CD radar. World of subways. 1 is New York, 2 Berlin, U-Bahn, 3 London Circle, and 4 is New York 7 line. Interesting. I will have to look at that and into that. And while we are walking outside, I'm waiting for ZD radar's answer with power cable that is hanging from ceiling. Interesting stuff. Okay. I thought I can go home here, but I can't because there is a bar. Anyway, that concludes the stream with me being caught here in this catwalk. And maybe I will sleep here as well so that I can take the train into service on the next day. Thank you, AJ, for moderating. Thank you, CD Radar. Thank you, Pocket Stickers, for your input. Always a pleasure with you. Have a nice week and take care.